Daniel walked through the wide, glowing streets of the alien market, his eyes trying to take in everything at once. Strange lights hung in the air without wires, floating gently like fireflies. Merchants called out in dozens of languages, some speaking in words, others sending strange clicking sounds or musical tones. The smells were thick sweet spices, bitter smoke, and something sharp like burnt metal. He had been here for 3 days, trading small earth-made tools for alien currency. It was going well so far, but today something felt different. The crowd was busy as always, yet Daniel noticed a strange gap in the flow of people ahead. It was as if the crowd naturally moved out of the way for someone. Slowly, that someone appeared a tall alien female walking straight toward him. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin shimmered as if tiny flecks of silver were caught under the surface. Her hair, if it could be called that, flowed like a soft, living ribbon of deep violet, moving even when there was no wind. Her eyes glowed faintly gold, watching him with a calm, unblinking focus. Daniel's first thought was that she must be a local celebrity, or maybe a powerful leader. Everyone around her stepped aside without being told, keeping a respectful distance. No one dared to meet her eyes for long, but she didn't look at anyone else. She looked only at him. Daniel slowed his pace, feeling the weight of her gaze. His stomach tightened. There was no reason for her to notice him. He was just a trader, an outsider from a faraway planet most aliens barely cared about. Yet she walked toward him as if she had been searching for him all her life. When she reached him, she stopped only an arm's length away. She was taller than him by at least half a head, and though her posture was relaxed, Daniel felt an odd pressure in the air, like standing too close to a storm. Before he could speak, she stepped closer. Very close. Daniel froze. Her hand came up slowly, her long fingers moving with grace. Then she touched his shoulder, just a light brush, but in that second, Daniel caught a scent that hit him like a shock. It was warm, like cinnamon and sunlit wood, but sharp at the edges, as if it carried a warning. It was unlike anything he had ever smelled before, and it seemed to sink into his skin, becoming part of him. Round them, the market changed. The busy chatter grew quiet. Several alien females nearby looked up sharply, their eyes narrowing at the sight. Others turned away without a word, as if deciding not to interfere. Daniel blinked. Hello," he said, his voice uncertain. The alien female didn't answer right away. Her golden eyes studied him with an expression that was both curious and possessive. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and smooth. The words were in her own language, but somehow Daniel understood. "Now they will know. You are mine." He stared at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Mine." The alien female's hand lingered for a moment longer before she stepped back, but not far. She kept her gaze locked on his, as if making sure he understood. Daniel's heart pounded. He didn't know what she had done, but it was clear the others had noticed. Whispers moved through the market. One alien female gave him a long, unreadable look before disappearing into the crowd. Another one shook her head slowly, almost like a silent warning. Daniel swallowed. "I think you've got the wrong person," he said. Though his voice lacked confidence, she tilted her head slightly, a faint smile on her lips. "No," she said simply. "I have the right one." Her words, calm as they were, sent a shiver down his spine. The air around them seemed to thicken. Daniel noticed, for the first time, a group of tall, armored alien males standing near a shadowed archway. They were watching him and her with sharp, focused eyes. Their armor caught the market lights, and each carried a weapon at their side. A strange feeling settled in Daniel's chest. He had no idea what was going on, but he knew one thing for certain. This woman was important, dangerous, and not someone to cross. She glanced toward the armored figures and then back at him. The glow in her eyes deepened. Daniel didn't know her name. He didn't know why she had marked him. He didn't even know what being hers meant in this strange alien culture. But in that moment, with the crowd watching and the scent still clinging to his skin, he understood one thing: whatever had just started, there was no easy way out. And for some reason, he wasn't sure if he wanted one. The alien female finally turned slightly. as if inviting him to walk with her. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Come." Daniel hesitated for only a second before following. The market around him slowly returned to its noise and motion, but he could still feel the stares burning into his back. Somewhere deep inside, a part of him knew his life had just changed forever. Daniel followed her through the winding streets of the market, the scent she had left on him still clinging stubbornly to his skin. It wasn't fading, if anything. It was growing stronger, mixing with the strange aromas of the alien bazaar until it overpowered them all. Every few steps, he caught someone glancing at him, then at her, and quickly looking away. He wanted to ask her what she had done, but the words stuck in his throat. There was something in the way she walked, smooth, confident, like every step was part of a silent warning to the crowd that made him think twice about speaking. The market noise grew distant as they moved deeper into the district, the stalls here fewer and the alleys narrower, the lights dimmed, replaced by the soft glow of hanging orbs that swayed gently in an unseen breeze. Daniel kept his eyes forward, but he could feel them, those armored males from before, still following. At a distance, finally, she stopped in a quiet corner where a carved stone wall shielded them from the main street. Without turning to face him, she spoke in a low, steady voice. "You were being hunted." Daniel blinked, startled by the sudden words. Hunted. Her head tilted slightly, and her golden eyes met his. Not for trade, not for talk, for sport. A chill slid down his spine. "Sport? You mean?" She took a step closer, closing the space between them again. "There are species here who collect rare things, rare weapons, rare treasures, rare beings." Daniel's stomach knotted. "Beings? You mean humans?" Her gaze softened slightly, but her voice stayed firm. "Here, you are not many. You are unknown to most. That makes you rare, and to some, that makes you valuable." He shifted uneasily, his mind racing. "So what you did, the scent," she said before he could finish, "is a claim. In my culture, it says to others, this one is under my protection. No one touches what is mine." Daniel stared at her. "You marked me." A faint smile touched her lips. "I saved you." Before he could answer, a shadow moved at the edge of the alley. The armored males had caught up. 3 of them stepped into view, their boots heavy against the stone. The one in front was broader than the rest, his armor etched with jagged black lines. His eyes, dark and cold, settled on Daniel before shifting to her. "You cannot keep a human," he said, his voice deep and edged with challenge. She didn't move. "He is already mine." The male took a slow step forward, his hand brushing the weapon at his side. "That can change." Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He had seen enough of alien disputes to know how quickly they could turn violent. The female, however, looked completely calm. "Step closer," she said softly, "and see how quickly you lose your courage." The male's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. The two behind him shifted uneasily, their eyes flicking between her and the leader. "This is not worth your life," she added, her tone still gentle, almost conversational. A long silence filled the air. Then, with a grunt, the leader turned away. "Keep your human, for now." He walked back into the shadows, his companions following without another word. When they were gone, Daniel finally exhaled. "What was that?" She turned to him, her eyes still glowing faintly. "That was your first lesson about this place. Here, strength speaks louder than reason." Daniel shook his head, trying to process everything. "You just stared them down." "They knew my name," she said simply, "and they knew what it would cost to challenge me." He hesitated. "Who exactly are you?" She studied him for a moment before answering. "Someone who saw a hunter's eyes on you and decided not to let them take what they wanted." Daniel didn't know whether to feel grateful or trapped. "So now what? Do I just follow you?" Her smile returned, but there was something sharper in it now. "If you want to live, yes." They began walking again, the narrow alley opening, back into the brighter streets of the market. But this time, Daniel noticed something different. Wherever they passed, the alien merchants and passers-by gave him a particular look, not just curiosity, but recognition. The scent she had put on him was invisible, but it worked like a signal. Every female alien they passed caught the faintest whiff and instantly knew he belonged to her. It was strange, unsettling. and oddly safe. At the edge of the district, she finally stopped in front of a tall structure made of dark metal and glass. She looked at him, her gaze steady. "You will stay here tonight. It is safe." Daniel glanced at the building, then back at her. "And tomorrow." Her voice was quiet, but the weight of it was heavy. "Tomorrow, you learn why they fear me." Daniel didn't ask more. He had the feeling that whatever the answer was, it would be something he'd never forget. Daniel barely slept that night. The room she had given him was quiet and comfortable, but his mind kept replaying the day's events, the brush of her hand on his shoulder, the scent that still clung to him, the way those armored males had backed down at her words. When morning came, the city outside was already awake. The soft hum of alien engines, the chatter of traders, and the distant pulse of music filled the air. Daniel stepped out of the building, blinking against the pale blue sunlight. She was waiting, dressed in the same flowing attire, her violet hair drifting as if moved by invisible currents. She stood at the base of the steps, her golden eyes swept over him, assessing, before she turned and began walking without a word. Daniel followed. They moved through the upper levels of the city now, where the buildings were taller, the streets wider, and the air carried the faint scent of polished metal and something floral. It was calmer here, but the looks they drew were the same: long glances, quick whispers, eyes darting to him and then away. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Are you going to tell me your name?" She glanced back at him briefly. "You may call me Sira." "Sira," he repeated quietly, tasting the unfamiliar syllables. "All right. And what exactly is it you do that scares people like that?" A faint smile touched her lips, but she didn't answer. They turned down a quieter passage that curved upward into what looked like an open courtyard. But the moment Daniel stepped inside, he froze. The space was empty except for 3 alien males, standing in a loose triangle, each armed, each watching them intently. These weren't the same armored ones from before. These were leaner, faster looking, with pale, scarred skin and slit pupil eyes. Daniel's steps slowed. "Friends of yours?" Sira's voice was calm. "No," the one in the middle spoke, his tone oily. "You're far from your usual hunting grounds, Sira." His gaze slid toward Daniel. "And you've picked up a collectible." Daniel's stomach tightened. Sira stepped forward slightly, placing herself between him and them. "If you know who I am, you know what happens next if you don't move." The alien in the middle smiled faintly, showing sharp teeth. "We also know you don't start fights without reason. This one," he jerked his chin toward Daniel, "is worth more than whatever you're being paid." "I'm not being paid," Sira said, her voice dipping into a dangerous softness. "And he's not for sale." The air seemed to thicken. Daniel took a slow step back, but Sira's hand came up slightly, a silent signal to stay put. "You've already been marked," the alien said to him, ignoring Sira. "You know what that means. It means she thinks she owns you, but the mark can be taken. You just have to survive the one who left it." Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. "And I'm guessing no one ever survives that." The alien's grin widened, but he didn't answer. In the next moment, Sira moved. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. 1 second she was standing in front of him, and the next she had crossed the space to the nearest male, her hand gripping the side of his neck. There was a brief flash of silver light from her palm, and he dropped, unmoving, to the ground. The other two stepped back instantly, their eyes wide. "Leave," she said simply. They didn't argue. Within seconds, the courtyard was empty except for Daniel, Sira, and the unconscious male at her feet. Daniel stared at her, his mouth dry. "What was that?" She didn't look at him. "That," she said, "was the reason you're still alive." She let the body drop fully to the ground and turned toward him. "You need to understand something. The scent I placed on you once. It's there. No one will approach you without thinking of me. It's not just a claim. It's a warning. They know what it costs to test me." Daniel swallowed. "And if someone decides to pay that cost?" Her eyes glinted. "Then I make sure they regret it." They left the courtyard, the sounds of the city returning around them. But now Daniel noticed a shift wherever they went. Space opened for them. Even in the busiest streets, the crowd seemed to part. Sira walked as if she owned every step, and Daniel realized that maybe, in a way, she did. Finally, as they reached a higher platform overlooking the glowing sprawl of the city. Daniel asked the question that had been clawing at him since yesterday. Why me? Syrah leaned against the railing, her gaze sweeping the horizon. Because I saw you before they did. Because I know what happens when humans vanish in this place. And because she paused, as if considering her words. I don't like hunters taking what they want without challenge. That's it. Daniel asked. She gave a small, almost amused laugh. Maybe. Or maybe I see something else in you. Daniel frowned. Like what? Her smile was faint but unreadable. Time will tell. And for the first time, Daniel wasn't sure if he was more curious or afraid. Daniel didn't see Syrah for the rest of the day. After they returned from the upper platforms, she had led him back to the safe building without explanation. She simply told him to stay inside and left. No time frame, no details, just gone. For hours, Daniel paced the quiet room. He tried to distract himself with the strange entertainment console by the wall alien dramas, with glowing subtitles that barely made sense, but his thoughts kept circling back to her. Why him? Why risk herself? And why did every alien who saw her act like she carried her own personal storm? When night fell, the city outside glimmered with countless lights. Daniel was just starting to think she might not return when the door slid open soundlessly. Syrah stepped in. Her hair was damp, as though she'd been caught in rain, and her expression was unreadable. She closed the door, activated the lock, and leaned back against it for a moment before speaking. They know you're with me now, she said quietly. That will draw both kinds of attention, those who will leave you alone, and those who will want to test me. Daniel frowned. Test you? Like the ones from earlier? She gave a small nod. Some will do it to measure my strength. Others will do it because they believe taking you will give them leverage. Leverage for what? Instead of answering directly, Syrah walked across the room and sat on the edge of the table. You need to understand the politics here. This station looks like a free market, but it's ruled from the shadows by a few old houses. Each controls a trade: minerals, weapons, living commodities. Daniel stiffened. Living commodities? You mean people? Her eyes met his. Yes. A knot formed in his stomach. So if you hadn't, you'd already be in a cage. She finished for him. He exhaled slowly. And you don't work for one of these houses? No, she said simply. I've spent years making sure they can't touch me. That makes me dangerous to them. And now, it makes you dangerous too. Daniel let that sink in. So, by helping me, you've put a target on both of us. Syrah's lips curved slightly. That target was already there. You're just standing in the same circle now. He gave a humorless laugh. Great. Her expression didn't change, but her tone softened. You're not helpless, Daniel. Humans, you have a way of surviving that most here underestimate. That's why I didn't just hide you. I want to see what you do when they come for you. He stared at her, unsure if she was protecting him or testing him. And if I fail, then I kill them, she said flatly. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Daniel asked, what did you do before this? Before whatever this is? Syrah leaned back slightly, her gaze distant. I hunted hunters. I tracked those who thought they could take without cost. I ended them, one by one. Daniel's throat felt dry. So you're like a bounty hunter? A shadow of a smile touched her lips. Not exactly. I don't work for anyone. I work for the balance. The phrase lingered in the air, vague yet heavy. Before Daniel could press her for more, a sharp tone echoed from the small comm unit by the door. Syrah crossed the room and tapped the panel. The screen lit up with the face of an alien male Daniel didn't recognize. Thin, pale-skinned, eyes like liquid steel. You've made a mistake, Syrah, the man said, his voice calm. You've taken something that belongs to House Varen. Syrah's tone was almost bored. If House Varen wanted him, they should have reached him before I did. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. They're willing to negotiate. Bring the human to Dock 17 by dawn, or we'll take him ourselves. The screen went black. Daniel stood frozen. House Varen, one of the oldest, Syrah said, locking the panel. They control living trade in this sector, and they think I'm property. They think everything is property, she said. Daniel moved closer. You're not going to hand me over, right? Her golden eyes locked on his. No. But this changes the game. They won't send amateurs next time. Next time. He echoed. She turned toward the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we move before they do. Daniel wanted to argue, to demand a plan. But the look in her eyes stopped him. It wasn't fear, it was the focus of someone who'd lived through too many battles to waste words. When she was gone again, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, his mind a storm. He was in a city he barely understood, marked by a woman who could make armed men back down, and hunted by a house that saw him as a prize. And somewhere deep down, he knew the only way out was through. The city was still sleeping when Sarah shook Daniel awake. Her voice was low but urgent. We leave. Now. Daniel blinked against the dim light. What time is it? Before dawn, she said, already moving around the room, collecting her gear. Thin black gloves, a short blade with a silver edge, and a small device that looked like a sphere split in half. Daniel swung his legs off the bed. Where are we going? Somewhere House Varen won't think to look first, she replied. Which means we have to move before they wake their hunters. He rubbed his face. And if they're already awake? Her golden eyes flicked. To him. Then we run faster. They slipped out into the cold morning air. The streets were almost empty, save for a few workers and street cleaners. The glowing market stalls were dark, their owners still hours from opening. Sarah led the way, through a series of narrow passages, moving quickly but without panic. Daniel tried to keep up, his breath clouding in the cool air. He was starting to think they might make it out unnoticed when a soft hum reached his ears, a sound that didn't belong to the waking city. Engines. Close. Sarah stopped at the mouth of an alley. Her eyes narrowing, a sleek black skimmer slid into view, gliding just above the ground. Its sides bore the silver crest Daniel had seen on the comm screen last night. A curved blade over a circle. House Varen. The skimmer stopped, and 4 figures stepped out. They weren't in armor like the ones before. These wore dark, flexible suits and masks that covered their faces, their movements too precise to be anything but trained operatives. Daniel's pulse jumped. They found us already. They expected me to run toward the outer docks, Sarah murmured. They guessed wrong, but it doesn't matter now. They'll follow until they have you. One of the masked operatives lifted a small device. Daniel felt a sharp vibration in the air, like a low hum pressing against his bones. Sarah's voice was steady. Signal disruptor. They're cutting off exits, which means they're boxing us in. Before Daniel could respond, the operatives started forward. Sarah's body shifted subtly, her weight lowering, her stance loose. Stay behind me, she said. The first one came fast, no warning, aiming low to grab Daniel's legs. Sarah's blade flashed, not striking to kill, but slicing across the attacker's arm. A sharp hiss of pain escaped the mask, and the operative staggered back. Another moved in from the side, but Sarah spun, catching him with her elbow before kicking his knee out from under him. He collapsed, gasping for air. Daniel stood frozen, torn between fear and awe. She moved like she had rehearsed this 1,000 times, every motion precise and economical. The third operative lunged straight for Daniel, and for a split second, Sarah was too far to intercept. Daniel instinctively ducked and shoved forward, ramming his shoulder into the attacker's stomach. The move surprised them both, and the operative stumbled back, giving Sarah the moment she needed to close in and drop him with a sharp twist of her blade's hilt to the side of his neck. The last one hesitated. Sarah took a slow step toward him. Go back to your masters, she said quietly. Tell them they'll need more than this. He turned and retreated without a word. Daniel's breathing was heavy. I thought you said to stay behind you. A flicker of amusement passed over her face. I also said humans have a way of surviving. Before he could answer, a loud metallic clang echoed from somewhere above. Sarah's gaze snapped upward. A dark shape detached from the rooftops, a second skimmer, this one larger, descending toward the alley. Her voice was sharp now. Move. They ran, weaving through the twisting streets as the skimmer's engines roared overhead. The sound of heavy boots hitting the ground followed close behind. Daniel's legs burned, his breath ragged. But Sarah didn't slow. They crossed into an older part of the city, where the streets narrowed into jagged stone corridors. The smell here was damp and metallic, and the walls were streaked with rust. Finally, Syrah ducked into a shadowed archway and pressed a small panel in the wall. A hidden door slid open just wide enough for them to slip through. It closed silently. Behind them, plunging them into darkness. Daniel leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "Where are we?" "An old smuggler's path," she said. "Abandoned, mostly." Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "Not everyone stays away, which is why we keep moving." They walked through the narrow passage, the air cool and still. Daniel's mind was still racing from the fight, the chase, the sheer speed at which everything was happening. Finally, he asked, "Why don't you just leave the station, take a ship and go?" "Because they'd follow," Syrah said. "And because running doesn't solve the problem, ending them does." Daniel swallowed. "You mean House Varen?" "Yes," she said simply. "And now that they've marked you, this is your fight too, whether you like it or not." Daniel didn't answer, but in the silence, he realized something. Fear was still there, yes, but under it was a spark of something else, something that felt dangerously close to resolve. The tunnel narrowed until Daniel had to duck to keep from hitting his head. The walls were damp, the air heavy with the smell of stone and rust. Syrah moved ahead without hesitation, her steps silent despite the uneven floor. "Where does this lead?" Daniel asked. "To a place where Varen eyes do not reach," she replied. "For now." Her tone made it clear that for now didn't mean safety, only a pause. They walked in silence for several minutes, the only sound the distant drip of water. Daniel's mind kept returning to her last words in the alley, ending them. She'd said it so simply, as if taking down an entire ruling house was a matter of time, not possibility. Finally, he said, "You've fought them before, haven't you?" Syrah slowed just enough to glance over her shoulder. "Yes, long before you arrived here." "What did they do to you?" Her eyes, faintly glowing in the dark, held his for a moment before she looked ahead again. "They took someone from me, someone I swore to protect. They didn't live long enough to regret it. But the house still stands. That is the mistake I intend to correct." Daniel didn't press. There was something in her voice that told him she rarely spoke about it. The tunnel finally widened into a circular chamber with walls carved from black stone, old crates and rusted equipment were scattered around, the remnants of whatever smugglers had once used this place. In the center, a low fire burned in a metal basin, its light flickering over the walls. Daniel noticed movement in the shadows. Figures emerged, 3 of them, none wearing Varen colors. Their clothes were mismatched, their faces marked with tattoos and scars. They looked dangerous, but their eyes went to Syrah first. One of them, a tall alien with mottled gray skin, grinned. "Didn't think I'd see you again." "You'll see me when I need something," Syrah replied. "And what's that?" "Passage," she said. "Quiet, fast, somewhere they won't expect." The tall one's gaze slid to Daniel. "And him?" Syrah didn't hesitate. "Mine." The word sent a shiver down Daniel's spine. It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but in this place, with these people, it felt heavier. The tall alien chuckled. "That's going to cost extra." Syrah stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. "No, it won't." The moment stretched until the alien looked away. "Fine, but you're not the only one they're hunting right now. House Varen's paying double for any live captures this week. They're moving in force." Syrah's eyes narrowed. "Why?" The alien shrugged. "Rumor says they lost something important. Or someone." Daniel felt her glance at him, though she didn't speak. They arranged for the passage, an old maintenance transport that would take them beneath the docks. It was risky. If Varen scouts found them there, they'd be trapped between walls of steel with nowhere to run. As they waited, Daniel finally asked, "What do they want with me, Syrah, really?" "Not the rare species excuse, because that can't be all." For a moment, she didn't answer. The firelight made her eyes look brighter, sharper. "They have records," she said at last. "Long before you were born, before humans even knew the names of the stars, there were encounters. Not with all your kind, only certain bloodlines. Yours is one of them." Daniel stared at her. "What does that even mean?" "It means they think you're not just rare, you're significant." "Significant how?" Her jaw tightened. "They believe you carry something Something from the old contact. I don't know if it's true, but they do, and they will tear you apart piece by piece to find it. Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest. And you? Do you believe it? She met his gaze. I believe they believe it. That's enough. Before he could reply, the tall alien returned. Your ride's ready, but you should go now. Words spreading fast. Doc 17's crawling with their people. Sarah rose smoothly, gesturing for Daniel to follow. They moved through another set of tunnels until the walls turned to metal, and the air smelled faintly of oil. The transport waited, a small, battered craft with a flat deck and shield plates patched in several places. They climbed aboard, and the pilot, a short alien with bright, shifting eyes, sealed the hatch. The transport hummed to life, sliding along the underground rails. Daniel sat across from Sarah, the dim cabin light casting shadows on her face. She was still, but her eyes were distant, as if tracking a dozen possibilities at once. You think they'll find us? He asked quietly. She didn't look at him. I think they'll never stop looking. The transport rattled through the dark. Somewhere above, the city was waking again, unaware of the hunt moving beneath its streets. Daniel leaned back, the scent she'd left on him still faint in the air between them. It was strange at first. It had felt like a brand, something forced on him. But now it felt like something else entirely. He wasn't sure if it was protection or a warning. The transport slowed with a grinding hum, the vibration fading beneath their feet. We're here, the pilot whispered, his voice low, like the metal walls themselves might be listening. Sarah rose first, scanning the narrow docking tunnel ahead. The air smelled faintly of salt and cold metal. Somewhere beyond the hatch, waves crashed against the lower docks, the kind of place smugglers favored for quick departures. Daniel followed her out, his boots clicking softly on the steel floor. The space was dim, lit only by a row of red emergency strips along the wall. It should have felt like a safe exit, but instead, it felt too quiet. Sarah stopped, her head tilting slightly. They're here. Before Daniel could react, shadows detached themselves from the walls ahead, 6 figures in dark combat armor, their visors glowing faint red. The crest of House Varen gleamed on their shoulders. The one in front stepped forward. His voice was calm, almost friendly. You've caused us trouble, Sarah. You've caused yourselves trouble, she replied. He ignored her, turning his gaze to Daniel. Human, do you know what you carry? Daniel forced his voice to stay steady. I'm starting to get the idea that you're not talking about my charming personality. A chuckle came from one of the armored figures, quickly silenced by the leader's raised hand. You are a relic, a living key to something your species once held. Give yourself to us, and we will not harm her. Daniel glanced at Sarah. She didn't look away from the leader, but her voice was ice. If he steps forward, it will be over my dead body. The leader tilted his head. That can be arranged. They moved as one. The tunnel exploded into motion. Sarah, leaping forward, her blade flashing in the red light, cutting a clean arc through the first attacker's arm. Daniel ducked instinctively as a bolt of blue energy scorched the wall behind him. 2 of them tried to flank Sarah, but she moved faster than he'd ever seen, her strikes precise and merciless. One went down with a blow to the helmet that cracked it clean across. The other staggered back as she drove her knee into his chest, sending him sprawling. Daniel had no weapon, but when one of the Varen soldiers grabbed him, he twisted hard, slamming the back of his head into the visor. The soldier swore, and Daniel shoved him toward the wall, buying a few precious seconds. The leader stayed back, watching, waiting. Sarah cut through the last of the immediate attackers, her breathing steady despite the chaos. But before she could close on the leader, he lifted a small, glowing device. The hum it emitted was different, lower, heavier. Daniel felt it in his teeth. The scent she had placed on him flared in his mind, sharp and overpowering, as if it was being pulled from his skin. Sarah's eyes widened. Move, too late. A wave of invisible force slammed into Daniel, dropping him to his knees, his vision blurred. And he heard the leader's voice, distant but clear. The mark is ours now. Sarah was on him in an instant, her blade striking the device from the leader's hand. Sparks exploded as it clattered to the floor. Her other hand gripped Daniel's shoulder, steadying him. He forced his eyes open. The remaining Varen soldiers were regrouping, circling. The leader drew a sleek black weapon from his hip, its barrel humming with energy. Syrah's voice was low, but urgent. "Daniel, you can end this." He shook his head, dizzy. "I don't even know what this is." "You don't have to," she said. "Just trust me." Something in her gaze unshakable. Fear scut through the fog in his mind. He nodded. She pulled him forward, straight toward the leader. The weapon fired, searing the air where they had been a heartbeat earlier. Daniel's arm shot out without thought, his hand slamming into the leader's chest. And then, something happened. The air cracked like thunder. A surge of light, pure white, blinding, rushed outward from Daniel's palm. The leader was hurled back into the wall, his weapon shattering on impact. Every Varen soldier staggered, disoriented, their visors flickering. When the light faded, the tunnel was silent. Daniel stood frozen, his hands still tingling. What was that? Syrah's lips curved into the faintest smile. Proof that they were right to fear you. The surviving soldiers didn't wait for more. They dragged their unconscious leader back toward the shadows, retreating without a word. Daniel turned to her. "You knew I could do that." "I suspected," she said. "And now they know too. Which means they'll come harder next time." He let out a shaky breath. "You really know how to make a guy feel special." She stepped closer, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder, the same place she'd marked him days ago. "Special doesn't survive out here unless it learns to fight." They walked out into the faint morning light spilling over the docks. The city stretched before them, alive and indifferent. Somewhere out there, House Varen was regrouping, plotting, sharpening its knives. Daniel looked at Syrah. "So, what now?" Her eyes caught the light, gold and unyielding. "Now, we make them regret they didn't finish the job today." And as they disappeared into the waking streets, Daniel realized something had shifted inside him. This wasn't just about survival anymore, that it was about making the galaxy remember what it meant to cross a human